Hello there, I'm Raymond Goh, and welcome to Viewpoint, live from Studio 7. Now, in the last couple of nights on the show, we've had a thorough look at the political landscape, the candidates, as well as the hot seats in the 14th general election. Tonight, however, we'll be exploring the campaigning methods and the ethics used by candidates from both sides of the divide. To discuss further on the topic, we have Assistant Professor Dr. Khairil Izamin Ahmad from International Islamic University, Malaysia, joining us here this evening. Welcome to the studio, Dr. Khairil.
Thank you very much for having me, Raymond.
Now, it's 7 days into the campaigning period so far, and another 4 days before Malaysians actually cast their ballots to choose the new government. Talking about campaigning, something interesting has actually occurred in Kota Damansara just a few days ago. Let's take a look at what this is.
Kampung Bunga Raya, Rumah Panjang. Penderitaan hidup rakyat Rumah Panjang selama 28 tahun menyayat, menyentuh hati saya. Saya rasakan bahawa perkara itu perlu diselesaikan segera dengan kerjasama YB Halimanton dan juga Menteri Perumahan Tan Sri Noh. Saya telah pastikan bahawa mereka diberikan rumah tetap di PBRT di Ladang Semat. Jadi mereka rasakan bahawa kalau belum jadi YB, boleh selesaikan masalah 28 tahun. Kalau diberikan peluang, boleh jadi pemimpin yang terbaik. Masih.
Fals pendirian kita berbeza untuk menyelesaikan masalah ini supaya negara kita diset pada arah yang terbaik untuk jadi satu negara yang unggul. We have the potential. We are a great country. We have great potential. Tapi pendirian kita ialah kalau pendirian yang sekarang dilakukan oleh kerajaan sekarang yang dipimpin oleh Barisan Nasional diteruskan, itu tidak akan memberi manfaat kepada
kita. Merancang untuk mewujudkan parking bertingkat untuk mereka, memberi keselesaan kepada mereka dan juga satu lagi memberi keselamatan kepada mereka apabila mereka diberi ruang dan peluang untuk kita mewujudkan parking bertingkat ini.
Well, generally what you've just seen is a short visual of candidates in the same constituency sharing the same platform for presenting their case in why voters should vote for them. And this is relatively new over here in Malaysia. What's your view on this, Dr. Khairil?
Well, first of all, speaking as a citizen, it's long overdue. It's really good to see candidates who are willing to put themselves to the test, sitting in front of citizens, taking questions, and informing them what they intend to do in response to the issues and the challenges that's being raised. From a more academic viewpoint, Malaysia is a parliamentary democracy, and the system does have this tradition. It's a long-standing tradition in, of course, the mother of all parliamentary democracies, Britain. They have the hustings where candidates will sit in front of their constituents and take questions, take criticisms, offer responses, offer promises. So it's a good start. It's interesting to see where this will go. But of course, there's some questions as well that's attached to this.
I have some questions about this as well, but before we go there, you did mention that it's widely used in some Western countries in the world, like in the UK, for instance. And while it's an interesting style and refreshing in some sense for Malaysians on a whole, do you think we should be encouraging this in Malaysia?
We should be encouraging this. Of course, we're very much used to the old school style charamas, political charamas, where you'll get people in droves going to listen. But it's very much a one-way street kind of thing. You know, you have usually very fiery speakers.
And then you go there, you just listen, and you try to take notes of what the candidates have said.
That's correct.
And by the time you go back, you may have some questions which are not answered.
That's right. So now we're talking about people having the opportunity to challenge their potential representatives, to question what their visions are for the for the constituency, should they win, and also to listen to just in general what kind of people are actually standing to represent them in Parliament or in the State Assembly.
State Assembly. You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that it's generally good where it gives an opportunity for people for Q&A, because in sessions like this where they share the same platform, they actually open to the floor for questions, and every single candidate will have the chance to answer whatever questions put forward to them. Now, on the other hand, what are the disadvantages, if any, you think?
We'll just take this context, yeah,
right.
What we've just seen.
Okay. Which is, by the way, in Kota Damansara.
That's correct, yeah. So it's very much a spontaneous thing. It's of course a result of initiative of local voters, the residents who are concerned about a lot of issues that's been bugging them for the past couple of years, for the past 5 years since the last election cycle. There could be a more structured program that's very much driven by the system, that would demand for candidates from every constituency to put themselves to the test. And this is, I guess, what's lacking, but it's not a fault at the moment, because this is a start. So
what you're saying is you don't see any disadvantages on this, with the exception of the fact that if one constituency can do this, all other constituencies perhaps should do this. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I mean, this is the ideal that we're looking at. But we need to keep in mind that in the Malaysian electoral system, we are very much divided by demographics, and some of these divisions are quite radical, actually. We're talking about East Malaysia, we're talking about West Malaysia, we're talking about the more urban kind of demographic, which Kota Damansara is. We're talking about the more semi-urban one. We're talking about differences in class within certain constituencies. We have huge constituencies. I think Bangi at the moment is over 100,000 people. Parliamentary seat.
You think there would be a disparity in terms of understanding of by the voters if it is maybe in an urban constituency versus a non-urban constituency?
It's a matter of strategy, I think. If you're a candidate and you're running in a specific constituency, you'll need to learn your voters, and you'll need to see what people actually want. In the more urban constituencies, people are happy to have a more distance kind of interaction with their potential representatives, and this is the case that we've seen in Kota Damansara. But you also have places where people demand a more kind of personal touch. So people would value your walkabouts in the markets. People would value your coming to their homes, shaking their hands, saying hi, asking them what they want. I mean, this is also an interaction. And it's a very effective one, and it's also, I mean, the objective is the same, right? You're trying to gather what people actually want, what people need, and then you'll try to respond to these needs. So it's about strategy and methods.
Right. What concerns me is the fact that while this is a good idea, having all the candidates who are contesting that particular seat to be on the same platform, answering questions from the public. Here's the concern. Would they somehow be pressured by certain answers given by a fellow opponent? Let's say, for instance, the opponent promises A. Wouldn't someone else, another candidate, be pressured to try and promise something beyond perhaps even party lines?
Right. That's one of the disadvantages of what we've just seen. If we're talking about the UK, for example, the game plan is usually, the blueprint of particular parties is usually laid down by the parties, and then candidates, however local they are, will stand by those principles, and these are very ideological. If we're talking about the economy, budget, for example, the Conservative Party is very much pro-tax cuts. It's very much pro less public spending. And then you have on the other side the Labour Party, which is very much pro-higher taxation and which is very much pro-welfare, which means a lot of public spending. And usually the candidates at the local level would respond and would toe these lines or toe these principles when they're speaking to their voters. So you do have that kind of control. There's a framework within which they're working, and they're not going to go beyond that.
And it's also a very clear-cut framework.
It's very clear.
Which separates one party from the other.
Yes.
Whereas in our case, it could be issues of the day, which separates a party from the next, but sometimes they may be for the same issue and against a different issue.
That's
totally.
Correct. Yeah, it could also be quite reactionary.
Correct.
So
yes.
you're very right. You know, I'm sitting there, and then my opponent is promising something that I had forgotten to promise, for example, or something that my party's manifesto hasn't actually touched on, but on the spot, in front of potential voters.
Whether that candidate can deliver, that's another question altogether.
That's correct.
All right, Dr. Kari, I'm going to have to cut you short for a while. We've got to go for a short break, and when we come back, we'll discuss further. More questions for you. Stay with us right here on Viewpoint on NTV7. All right, welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us right here on Viewpoint. With us in the studio is Dr. Khairil of IIUM. And Dr. Khairil, before we went for the break, you were saying something about candidates on the same platform. Some of them may actually start to promise things beyond party lines and beyond capabilities.
Yes. Oh, that would be the danger. I suppose if it's being laid down by the parties, and perhaps this is where we can get into whether or not the question of whether or not it's important for prime ministerial candidates to also be engaging in this kind of debates and conversations, then you'll have a more structured, a trickle-down kind of.
Are you referring to something similar to the U.S. presidential debates?
Well, we're very much an Anglophone country, so our examples would always usually be the US and the UK, of course. But the US is a presidential system, and this is something that's actually a must in these systems, because people are directly electing their potential president. So it's a little bit different with us. We're a parliamentary system. We're not technically electing our prime minister. We're electing
correct, yes,
our MP and our, of course, in Malaysia, because we're a federal system, we're also electing our state assemblyman. So it's not really something that's a must in the parliamentary system. But if we've been looking at recent trends within the, for example, again, the UK system, it has been taking place. What's been happening is that different TV stations will take the initiative to host this debate.
Right.
So the party leaders are not forced to come, but of course it would look really bad if they don't turn up. So the BBC will have their own, and ITV will have their own one, Sky will have their own one, and usually leaders of the major parties will come, Conservatives, Labour, Liberal Democrats, and Scottish National Party, and all these bigger parties.
All right, now let's go into, I'm sure you've been following the progress of some of the campaigning that's been going around for the past 7 days. In fact, some would even say that before nomination day, some parties have already been campaigning. Have you seen any signs of maturity, both on the candidates, the parties, and of course the voters themselves? Have you seen any sign of maturity? It seems like everything is going at a very nice pace. Language is okay.
I would rather use the word civility. I think there's more civility in how supporters, for example, of different parties are taking to the campaign. There's more acceptance that we are very much going towards this period of time where we're going to become a full-on democracy. It isn't like the 80s or the 90s where campaigning is very much dominated by only one side. Now you have the social media, and of course the old-style political rallies are still taking place, but there seems to be more acceptance that people will support different parties.
All right. We'll talk a little bit more about the social media,
yes,
the campaigning
yes,
using social media in a moment. In the meantime, stay with us. This is Viewpoint. There's more when we come back.
Lautan Biru yang penuh semangat.
Right, welcome back to Viewpoint. Tonight in our studios, we have our guest, Dr. Khairil of IIUM with us. And we also have at Lembah Pantai parliamentary seat, we have Barisan Nasional's Datuk Sri Raja Nong Chik, Raja Zainal Abidin, whom we believe we're going to cross over right now to see how he's doing. Datuk Sri?
Yes, good evening.
Raymond here, Datuk Sri. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Together with me is Dr. Khairil. Just a quick question.
Sure.
How's the atmosphere over there? And are you having any issues during the campaign with your opposing party and so forth?
Well, the atmosphere is quite electric. No major issues, but the way I see the PKR is trying to build up on wild acquisitions, be it on national issues or even at the local level. So I think it's a build up, including saying various things that is untrue. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned, Datuk Sri Raja Nong Chik, that the atmosphere is electric. Give us an idea of what's the turnout at the Lembah Pantai area that you are in now?
Well,
or during your charamas, what's the turnout?
Compared to PR13, I think the turnout is better. But obviously, we don't get the same turnout as rural areas where I think they are more sort of interested to go for the charamas because also social media play a big role as well. But whatever it is, most of our charamas, the attendees are very supportive, and because they want the change. Yeah, they want to change from the 2 terms of PKR leadership or parliament here, but they have not end up with anything substantial.
All right, Datuk Sri, I'm sure you've heard or have seen about the new style of campaigning in Kota Damansara parliamentary constituency, where all the candidates share the same platform during a forum, and they actually take questions from the members of the public who attend the charama. Are you thinking of doing this, and do you think this is a good way to campaign?
No, I think from my past experience, where especially PKR is fond of inciting hate and anger and all these things, I don't think it's a good platform. Unless everybody is a new candidate, maybe maybe it's okay. But once you have the difference between me and Fahmi, for example, I've serviced this area not only the last 5 years when I'm not even a minister, but even before that. So it's a different ball game. It's better whether you want service or you just want rhetoric.
Right. Datuk Sri, we know you're very busy and you probably have to go, but just one last question for you. How active are you in social media campaigning?
Well, compared to PR13, I think my team is quite active in social media, and we are more better prepared to take the challenges like we meet in social media. So hopefully this time around we hope to do better than PR13.
All right, thank you so much, Datuk Sri Raja Nong Chik at Lembah Pantai. Thank you for talking to us, and good luck in your campaigning and on the 9th of May. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, you've heard something very interesting coming from Dr. Sri Rajanongchik. He actually mentioned this is an interesting point
Yes.
about candidates sharing the same platform.
Yes. He's not all for it, is he?
Yes, and he's got some valid reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if I heard correctly, his reasoning is if everybody is relatively new and of course civil, then it's okay. But if you have old enemies and you have something to grind with each other, then it may get a little out of hand. And don't forget, everyone would have their supporters there.
Yes. Well, now we can go back to your use of the term maturity earlier. Old enemies can be mature as well. So I would actually say that it's possible to have old enemies on the same stage. It will probably get surprising. Some surprising things that we may not be expecting before. It's about experimenting. It's about just fine-tuning whatever that goes wrong. It's also about just putting people up there. You know, in the end of the day, if you've got cameras in front of you,
right.
You're not going to. You should not be. Airing out
well, that's possibly
all
true.
those animosities.
But what you said about fine-tuning is, I'd like to draw that to a parallel, which is candidates and parties are actually fine-tuning their social media campaigning. As we all know from record, it was actually the opposition that were the pioneers in social network campaigning. And how do you see this pattern now, today? Would you say that the BN has sort of caught up? Are they on the same playing field where social media and campaigning is concerned?
Right. So in fact, 2008 election was, according to a lot of researchers, this was the social media election because the opposition made a lot of gains in terms of the number of seats through their sheer use of the social media to get through to their the voters. And I think BN was not prepared, was not fully prepared for this kind of social media onslaught. It has been building its own social media capacities. Prime Minister himself has been very much engaging with the people through various platforms, standard social media sites like Twitter and Facebook, but also his website. Every time the budget draws closer, people are consulted. People are asked to just put it to public what they expect from the budget. So there's been this effort from the BN side to try to catch up.
But they have not. In your opinion, of course, in your viewpoint.
Caught up they have, I think. I think
right.
they've managed to gain grounds in this social media battle.
But perhaps the question is actually, what should the content be? Because if you see, there's actually a difference between BN's content in social media versus the opposition's content in social media.
That's right.
How do you counter that?
I guess there's two ways to do this. Politicians say more mature democracies in the West, for example, they're quite...
But what I'm saying is, Dr. Karil, on one hand, I've seen many of the social media posts. BN is always using content like what they've done, what they did this week, what they have contributed to this constituency. And then on the other hand, the opposition, because they are the opposition, obviously they are not in government, they don't have any track record to show on social media, so majority of the content is like allegations, putting certain projects down and so forth, so forth. This is the disparity here.
This is what I was saying. There's two ways to do this.
Right.
One is if you look at the politicians in the West, they're very much more concerned only about reporting what they've been doing. So
right.
I've been doing this walkabout, here are some pictures, very happy to have met my voters. this is, if I'm in government, this is what the government has been doing, and we've reduced poverty by how many percent.
Correct.
So there's always this use of statistics and facts, I guess. But if you're if you put yourself in that opposition perspective,
there's no
perhaps
projects to show, so to speak.
You've got nothing to lose as well, I guess.
Yeah, so it's a very different ball game altogether.
It's possible to share a bit more than just reporting what you've done. But then we're talking about politicians who have actually, from the federal opposition, but who have actually occupied the seat in the government,
right.
say in Selangor, for example.
Okay.
They've also adopted this very kind of standard method of
yes.
just reporting what they've been doing. This is the ongoing report card for the voters to see. But if you're not, if you're a greenhorn, if you're just new, there's really not
then
much to report. So perhaps you tend to share a bit more than you should.
On that note, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you with us, Dr.
Thank you for
Khalil.
having me.
I'm afraid we've run out of time. And that's it for tonight's episode of Viewpoint. Do tune in tomorrow, same time, same place, for more topics of discussion in the run-up to the 14th general election. And of course, for updates on GE14, do visit myundi.com.my. I'm Raymond Goh. Thanks for tuning in. Good night.